From Albuquerque to Angel Fire. Depend on 96.3 News Radio KKOB.
News Radio KKOB 96.3. Imagine a wildfire roaring up onto your property, forcing you and your family from your home, displacing all of you for weeks, if not for months, and then you face the hurdle of rebuilding your property and your life. One of the first steps in that process is navigating the maze of insurance claims and FEMA. Joining us, Evan Crocker with New Mexico Legal Aid to help us with that maze. Good morning, Evan.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Well, it's important information, and I'm hoping that people are getting this information. Let's start out with what are the first steps for folks who have lost their homes and property in the wildfires here in New Mexico?
Yeah, there really are going to be two main avenues, I think, for near-term relief. One is going to be FEMA assistance, and the other is going to be SBA low-interest loans. So that's the Small Business Administration. I think for most people, FEMA is going to be the first avenue that they're going to want to go to. FEMA can help with underinsured, uninsured, or your insurance is just simply delayed significantly, and they can apply for assistance. It's critical that I get this out there now because the deadline to apply for FEMA assistance is currently July 5th. So that's coming up pretty quickly. And there are, you can look on the FEMA website. There is also the State Bar of New Mexico has created a hotline that people can call into and basically ask for assistance with FEMA because the FEMA application, it's not extremely difficult, but it is kind of cumbersome, and a lot of it relies on documents. And for folks who have lost something in a fire, it's entirely possible that they've lost the documents that they need. So I'm going to suggest people look to FEMA first and then to the SBA, which is more about low-interest loans for businesses, agricultural producers, homeowners, things like that. So those are really the two main avenues for assistance that people can seek right now.
It seems like a short window. I mean, July 5th being the deadline to apply, and we've only been dealing with these fires for a couple of months. I mean, folks maybe haven't even gotten back into their place yet to even try and find some of the paperwork.
Yeah, it is frustrating in terms of a deadline. In theory, they could push it back, and I'm actually honestly a little surprised that they haven't so far. It's not a drop-dead deadline in that if you were to apply after the 5th, there is no chance that you can get anything. At that point, you're looking at making a hardship application and saying for whatever reasons you weren't able to get the application in by July 5th. And I do want to highlight two other things. There are two other forms of FEMA relief, disaster SNAP and disaster unemployment assistance. The deadlines have passed for both of those, which is frustrating, but people can still apply, and I would encourage them to do so because you can make the argument that you have good cause for having applied late. You weren't aware, you couldn't get to the documents. There's any number of things, and even if folks are denied, organizations like ours can help with appeals. So I would encourage folks to just apply anyway. Because there are avenues for still getting disaster SNAP, disaster unemployment, and FEMA assistance. It just might take a little bit of prodding. But yeah, it's hard to argue that July 5th is coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it sure is. I guess too, the thing is, and it would be an easy argument to make, as you mentioned, there is a ripple effect from when the fires first start, and you may have been working at the beginning. And then because these things have gone on for so long, you may have lost your job. I can see where you could make the argument that, you need a little bit of leeway in making those applications. Yeah,
and in my so this is not my first disaster experience. I actually got my disaster wings working on Harvey with Lone Star Legal Aid in Houston. And my experience was that FEMA is not, they want to help people. And so oftentimes the hardship argument didn't have to be particularly elaborate. But I think people get discouraged thinking, oh, well, the deadline's passed. What? And I would say apply and make your argument and say, look, I didn't know, or this is just now impacting me. There's no harm in it because, worst case scenario, they say no. And even then, organizations like ours and then others are out there to help people with appeals.
Well, I can see where it would be easy to get discouraged as well, because, you're starting out at ground zero being probably pretty darn depressed over the fact that you've lost your home and your property, and then trying to climb out of that hole is not easy.
Yeah, it's just another thing that people have to think about in a time when they are already consumed with plenty of other things going on, and it's why I would encourage people to reach out for assistance with this. And I'll plug the State Bar Hotline real quick, and hopefully you guys can put it up somewhere. It's 1-888-985-5141. And what the State Bar is doing is sort of acting as a nexus to direct people to organizations and volunteer attorneys who are out there to help. Like my organization, for instance, we have an income requirement. We can only help individuals up to a certain income threshold, but there are a number of volunteer attorneys who have offered their services, and the State Bar Hotline can point people in the right direction. And I kind of want to just highlight, when I say that there's all these attorneys out there who are helping, it's not because we're taking FEMA to court or anything like that. The application is not, it's not difficult, it's just cumbersome. And if the application is asking you for proof of home ownership and your deed or whatever it is that you had, went up in smoke, we can help people find these documents. We can help people navigate the system to get replacement documents, to go through the application and say, yes, you've got X, Y, and Z, but we need A. And take some of that burden off of people so that they don't feel like this is just another Byzantine maze that they are going to navigate on their own. And I think that can just be a really big benefit for people to have somebody else helping them along this system.
I know that several centers that have been helping folks with in-person assistance, filling out these quote-unquote cumbersome FEMA forms. Some of those centers are in the process of closing or may have already closed, in fact, this weekend. Are there still places, I guess I should say, where people can get in-person help with filling out these applications?
I believe there are still a few. I apologize, I don't have a list of them right in front of me. I believe there are still a few disaster centers, but unfortunately, disaster centers tend to close relatively early because the immediate need of sheltering people and kind of that initial rush of immediate assistance fades, which isn't great because people are going to need assistance beyond that, which is why I would encourage people to look for the hotline, to go to FEMA on the website. But I understand that individuals may not have that sort of access. And so I can certainly try to find which ones are still open and let you all know. But I do realize that is going to be that isn't one avenue that is currently closing, and that is frustrating. Yeah,
and in fact, at least where I've looked, it's closing rapidly. So even trying to find an office open this weekend, this might be the last weekend that you would be able to do that. Again, right. That is the hotline number, the 1-888 number that you gave us? 985-5141. 888-985-5141. And that kind of goes to a central location. It's open from 9 to 1, and then if you leave a message afterwards, somebody within 24 hours is supposed to get back in touch with you. But the idea there is it's sort of a central location that people can call into, and they will direct individuals towards either private attorneys or organizations that can help them with the process. I guess bottom line, there is help available. Don't freak out.
Yes, and I would encourage folks, July 5th is coming up. Even if July 5th passes, apply for disaster SNAP, apply for disaster unemployment assistance, even though those deadlines have passed, because there are arguments to be made that there is, I guess the fancy term, good cause. But to the rest of us would just be, I didn't know, or there was a reason I couldn't do this. And like I said, my experience with Harvey was that, FEMA is not trying to harm people. They want to help people, but there is still a layer of, bureaucracy and all of this that is there. But yes, folks should apply, and then we'll figure out the next step after that.
Well put. Evan Crocker, Managing Editor for Consumer Law and Practice Group at New Mexico Legal Aid. Now, coming up, we're going to talk more about New Mexico Legal Aid and what kind of help you might be able to get next as the weekend continues. 96.3 News Radio KKOB.
News Radio KKOB is grateful to be honored on the floor of the House.
Today I rise to honor New Mexico's first radio station, KKOB, which this year celebrates their 100th anniversary in broadcasting. They have a love for our community for over 100 years, and I commend KKOB's dedication to New Mexico, and I look forward to their next century of broadcasting.
Hear Representative Yvette Harrell's full comments online at newsradiokkob.com. From Edgewood to Elephant Butte, count on 96.3 News Radio KKOB.
8:50 Saturday morning. It's the weekend. Terry Travis along with you. And our guest, Evan Crocker, is the managing attorney for Consumer Law Practice Group at New Mexico Legal Aid. Evan, when we talked earlier, we were discussing how the deadline is coming up on July 5th for making those applications to FEMA for folks who have lost everything to the wildfires, or lost a lot, I should say. There are other things, though, that New Mexico Legal Aid is involved with. We wanted to talk about some of those other services, too. So to begin with, you had talked about it a little bit. Who precisely are you working with at New Mexico Legal Aid?
Right. So we're a civil legal aid society. If you wanted to think about it, the non-criminal version of the public defender's office. So our client base are low-income individuals. And just to give you a numbers, we tend to work with individuals who are up to 150% of the federal poverty line. And I don't know if you know exactly what the federal poverty line is. It is shamefully low.
Yeah, that I do know.
Yeah. So we work with individuals up to 150% of that. And even though it is shamefully low, we have a lot of folks that we can help. So that's sort of the initial threshold. There are some programs and things that can be a little bit different, but by and large, 150% of the poverty line, those are the folks that we're working with.
And what sort of issues are you helping those folks with?
So we have a number of different practice groups, and I'll try and list them off real quick. We have my group, the Consumer Law Practice Group. We have an Economic Security Practice Group. We have a Family Law Group. We've just restarted our Veterans Group. We have a Native American Law Group, and we have a Housing Group. Those are kind of our big groups. So we're pretty much covering anything and everything that's not criminal law related to the best of our abilities.
And as far as I understand that there are some new areas that are coming online that you're going to be working with. Consumer Division?
Well, so our Consumer Division works with debt and other sorts of things. I have recently, or we have recently launched a bankruptcy program, which I'm very excited about. I'm not excited that people might need bankruptcy, but I'm excited that we may be able to offer that assistance, because I am a big believer in bankruptcy as a means for helping people get back on their feet. The U.S. actually has remarkably forgiving bankruptcy laws that really, really can help people. And instead of this stigma that I think is attached to it, I would encourage people to think that if they have a great deal of debt, bankruptcy is something that they can think about to help clear that. So that is a new program that the Consumer Law Group has launched. Alongside, we are getting a veterans unit up and running as well. So those are kind of two of the newer ones. But really, we've been out there doing housing work, work with the Native population, work with victims of domestic violence and individuals like that. I mean, that is the core mission of legal services, and it is well established.
I'm wondering if you're seeing a demand increase for your services, especially with what we've all been dealing with economically, through bankruptcies or in landlord-tenant issues, because I know that's been another area where people have really needed some help as they've tried to navigate through the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it is a sad inevitability of it that there has been a spike in, I would say, particularly in consumer and housing issues. We received a large grant to really focus on pandemic-related housing issues, which what we're really talking about there is evictions and eviction defense. And I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, we've seen more people reaching out because of the lingering impact of the pandemic and things like that. Bankruptcy-wise, I would love. Well, again, not love for people to need bankruptcy, but I would love for people to reach out to us. We just launched that. It is I think, a great tool to really help people who are, because it kind of pulls in the nexus of all of these other issues, because when you have a housing issue or you have a family violence issue or all these other things, they cascade and kind of in the background, these consumer issues pop up because you are accumulating debt and can't necessarily navigate that. So unfortunately, we have seen an increase, but fortunately, our folks are absolute rock stars, and we are helping anyone and everyone that we possibly can.
So what are some of the questions you might ask yourself if you're considering bankruptcy, so that you could kind of figure out, is that the way to go before they make the call to you?
Sure. So I would consider a couple things. I mean, the initial one is really the debt load. If you are carrying $50,000 in debt scattered across credit cards and other, high interest payday loans or things like that, and it's just simply an impossibility for you to keep up with those payments, well, that's something to think about, because a lot of those debts can be cleared in bankruptcy. So if you've got this huge debt load that just, is unassailable, there is an avenue for clearing that. And so that's really kind of the first question. Another question that you have to ask yourself, and I don't want to get too far into the legal weeds, but it's basically, are you judgment proof? If you have nothing and there is nothing that a creditor can come and take from you, the most bankruptcy is probably going to do for you at that point is just to get them to stop calling, which is a benefit in and of itself, because, I have student loans. I've had calls from student, loans collectors, and they are stressful. They take a psychological toll on you, but from a purely financial standpoint, it's not, you don't necessarily need to do it at that point. But really, I mean, take a look at your debt load. If you're carrying a ton of debt and you can't tackle it, bankruptcy is something that you might want to consider.
Evan, we really appreciate all the information, because you have given us a lot to think about, and we thank you for your time and letting us know a little bit more about New Mexico Legal Aid and what kind of help we can receive there.
Yeah, if I could just throw out the website and the number real quick for folks.
You bet.
It's NewMexicoLegalAid.org, and you can reach us at 833-545-4357. Again, we work with low-income individuals, but we do a lot. We do housing, we do economic security, so that's going to be unemployment benefits and Medicaid and things like that. I mean, if it's a civil issue, it's probably something that we can help folks with.
Awesome. Evan, we've got a link up on our Facebook page, too. We got to scoot along, but we sure appreciate having you. Evan Crocker, he's the managing attorney for the Consumer Law Practice Group at New Mexico Legal Aid. You want to find out more about New Mexico Legal Aid, we have that link up on our Facebook page. Some really good information there. And maybe some help that you need.